Irreverent, entertaining, cool. You're listening to LA Talk Radio.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.
Good morning, Ethan. How are you? Oh, there's silence. He's not here. What happened there? Oh, my goodness. Do you remember last week when he was ragging me, John, about not being here on time? I guess he's just become a real Californian, because it's raining here in Los Angeles, and, it's pouring down, and maybe he got stuck in a flood. But, some roads are flooded here.
We had a lot of flooding over the past few weeks. My car is filthy just from driving around on highways and roads that were covered by muddy water just a week or so ago. So it's been that time of year for sure.
Yeah, well, California doesn't usually get a lot of rain, and God bless whoever sent us this much, because we need it at the moment, as probably a lot of people have heard. I went to the Rose Bowl last week, the Rose Bowl parade with my family, and
how was that?
Oh, it was fabulous. All the floats, but there were so many people. It was just jam packed. But my point being was that the year before, 2 years ago, when we went, the grass was green along the side, and now it's all brown dust and dusty because they haven't watered it because of the water shortage. So
see our yard, our grass looks like a golf course. We've had so much rain and higher than normal temperatures. Usually by this time of year, our grass is, looking pretty rough, but it looks as good. It looks every bit as good as it did in the early spring. Even in the summer, it looks beautiful.
Well, God bless you at that point. It's like England. England actually has a lot of greenery around because it's always raining. Everybody's like, oh, the English weather, but at least it's green when it's sunny.
We'll probably pay for it around early February. That's usually when we start to get our snows. So the last couple of winters have been generally mild, but we'll have 1 or 2 weeks that are really, really icy and dangerous and cantankerous. So we'll see what happens.
Well, I know we don't have Ethan at the moment, but we've got a lot scheduled for this particular segment of the show. Beverly Shihara sends me these outlines every week, which we take certain notes from. This one's extensive because there's so much to talk about education. Obviously, we've talked about the Lucci lights that for El Salvador and books for El Salvador that you've done a fantastic job pulling out Heroes of the Week, who are now donating books for Kimberly Moore and Laurie Oppenheimer to take back to El Salvador.
There are some really exciting things going on behind the scenes right now at the Peace Fund between the Kimberly Moore Foundation and her Adopt a Light initiative, which you can read about at the KimberlyMooreFoundation.org, and many of our heroes of the week who are working with her to get together books and computers to send to those students down there. So as soon as all of that is finalized, we'll be definitely talking about that a little bit more on the show, announcing who those heroes are. And we might also have some help from today's Hero of the Week, Rachel Ley, who will be calling in later in the show.
Well, the interesting thing was I was actually doing a little research regarding, because Kimberly was saying, it's dangerous in El Salvador right now because there's a lot of issues with gang violence, etc. And one of the main groups responsible is the MS-13 group, which was actually a gang that was came from El Salvador, was then brought to the U.S. from the refugees, and then created their own gang here, and then were deported back to El Salvador, and now are in a running battle with the other rival gang faction there, and that's what all this is about. I was actually looking at it. The MS-13, according to the FBI, have about 100,000 members worldwide, a lot of them in the United States, in places even in Virginia, outside of Washington. There's a lot of this. So it's and the thing.
It's crazy how quickly that spreads.
Well, it spread. 100,000 members. Think about that. And all they want to do is, do whatever they do. I don't want to tout everything that they're doing, but the issue is a lot of these guys come from the streets, and they come from poor homes, poor families. They're picked on. They have to group together and eventually become into gangs that are extremely violent. MS-13 came from a paramilitary background in the beginning, and now it's turned into a massive gang. These guys are in the prison system. In El Salvador, for instance, the MS-13 actually run the prisons. The police, they do not run the prisons, the officers, because they're too scared to go inside. Mm-hmm. So, you're dealing with people that actually don't have an education a lot of the time because they weren't given the chance when they were children to further their education. And I think that the problem we have a lot of the time is that we export our problems somewhere else rather than handle them face on. And the organizations like Kimberly Moore and people like Laurie Oppenheimer from the El Salvadorian Congress basically want to make a difference, but they are in danger when they go down there. Kimberly told me one of Laurie's compatriots yesterday was killed. So we're not talking about something that is just a simple thing. We don't understand it. Living our lives that we do in relative security most of the time, we deal with having to take our kids to school and drive a car and try and find what the gas rent is going to be and what what the rent is going to be and how much money you're going to get for gas this week, et cetera, et cetera. But there are a lot of people in very dire conditions, and what do? They turn to violence because they don't have any other means of supporting their lives, and it's a matter of survival. It's not a matter of I want to join this gang because I've got a lot of money and I can do it. It's because they have no other choice.
Well, it's the criminals and the victims both. I mean, you talked about the MS-13 group that was in Virginia. That was the segment of MS-13 that was heavy into child prostitution, and they culled these child prostitutes from children who were runaways. So here you have the.
Hold on, John. Hold on, John. I've got an interesting. Yes, Ethan. How are you this morning?
I'm good. How are you?
Oh, I'm fabulous. We're running the show at the moment. You are live on Peace Fun Radio. You're still with us.
Yeah, I am actually stuck in a rainstorm and in a flood and in what looks like a mudslide on the 10. And I have been for a while.
Sorry, I'm not laughing. Because I actually said that there was probably a lot of dealings with water this morning.
This is the worst I can really remember, actually. Not to sound like a weatherman. I don't even know if you can hear it, but I feel like Moses better come and part the ocean in front of me so I can get through my neighborhood.
Well, if anybody could play Moses, it's you, Ethan.
Hardly. This is actually quite crazy, to be honest with you. And the freeways are, of course, ridiculous. I'm getting on and off them as I try to navigate them. I've been on the roads forever, so I'm actually calling to apologize. And fortunately, as the audience can tell you, the show's probably better off without my presence on it.
No, actually, it's better with you on it because then I've got somebody to go backwards and forwards on. I actually was very, very happy this morning to see you not here because now I can actually rag you on it. I mean, you do have an excuse, but you know what? Why not?
He's very easy on me.
Deserve ragging, but that's what Scott Bierly is for because he's a good conversationalist. I mean, I can actually barely hear you with the rain bouncing off of my car. Ah, Jesus, look at this.
Yeah,
sorry, I got a rock slide in front of me.
Oh, fabulous. Well, please.
Well, my neighborhood, because you've been to my house. Look at this. It's like a quicksand swamp. Hold on. I got to move or I'm going to drown here.
Okay.
My neighborhood's all canyons and desert. So it looks like most of the neighborhoods come down and have really actually created a real-life quagmire. I may actually be stuck here all day. I'm being totally serious.
Wow.
I may not even be able to get out of this area.
Well, I hope you be safe, Ethan. I mean,
yes, be careful.
we will run the show without you, but please be safe. And let's talk afterwards when you got a moment to chat.
Yeah, I'll call you back because I sent you an email this morning about other things. I won't bore the audience with it, but I'm really sorry. The audience is celebrating, but I myself am sorry I can't be there, and I'll take whatever ragging you can give me next week.
No, you're let off. You have a valid get out of jail card on this one.
Oh man, I'm surprised you made it. Actually,
well, actually, the funny thing was there were a couple of roads closed this morning when I was driving in, so it is very. It's interesting to see how California handles this rain. I'm glad we have it. I hope it reaches the water table and actually gets us out of some of this drought. But, it's going to take a few weeks of this rather than just a couple of days of it.
Yeah, I'm going to start building an ark tonight so I can get around town.
Are you gonna bring in some animals 2x2?
Yeah, I'm going to have to save somebody because I don't think everyone's going to make it out of this mess. So I'm going to have to go into rescue mode here.
Well, Ethan, stay safe, brother, and we'll talk to you when you get out of the mudslide.
Again, I apologize, man. Thank you very much.
All right,
Be safe, Ethan.
Bye now.
All right, bye-bye.
Well, there you have it, everybody. Ethan Dettenmaier live from the streets of California, stuck in a mudslide somewhere on the freeways. It's not as he said. It is really coming down this morning.
That was an action-packed update.
Yeah, there was. We haven't had those. Maybe we should have people driving around. You know how they have it on some other radio shows where they have the helicopters? We can't afford one, unfortunately. But, we should actually have, some action update around town. That's not a bad idea, actually.
All you need to have for a Peace Fund radio helicopter is just the sound effect of a helicopter. We can fake the rest.
Mind you, it might be a bit noisy. I don't know. It's just John, so anyway, we were talking before Ethan came on about MS-13 and what you were saying about it. I don't know if you can remember because we've had that interlude, as I say. But
we were talking about how their crimes often do affect children directly, and there were three ringleaders of MS-13 who were arrested in Virginia between 2011 and 2012 who were running a child prostitution ring. And, this is a situation where, as you said earlier in the show, a lot of these gang members join these gangs because they come from poverty, they come from nothing, and this is the brotherhood that they find. But the victims also then come from poverty because many of the children who were pulled into this prostitution ring were runaways who were lured away from public shelters and other areas where kids can be vulnerable if they don't have homes and shelter. So it's just a sad circle that these that poverty can create these kinds of situations. And we're trying to take a look today at how all of that ties in with education. And how education could be the key to hopefully turning that around. Well,
the poverty and education are really inextricably linked. I mean, education is a primary means of social mobility. It enables people who are born in poverty to just rise up through society and actually have a better standing in a sense. I mean, I think. There's. I want to do some recap actually of some of the facts that we've had over the couple of weeks that we've been running the educational portion of our show. The latest data collected from the states by the National Center for Education Statistics, the NCES, show that 51% of the students across the nation's public schools were low income in 2013, Go ahead. Sorry, John. What were you going to say?
I was going to say, too, and it's spread across the country as well. It's the concentrations are highest in the South and in the West. 13 of the 21 states with the majority of low-income students in 2013 were located in the South, and 6 of the other 21 states were in the West.
Yep. And one other update was Mississippi led the nation with the highest rate, 71%. Almost 3 out of every, and I've mentioned this one before, 3 out of every 4 public school children in Mississippi were low income. That's the nation's second highest was found in New Mexico, where 68% of all public school students were low income in 2013. I mean, it's a lot of numbers we run, John. I mean, it's it's kind of scary when you're looking at. You don't really see it unless you're living in it. And actually, this was something that Kimberly was talking about, before Kimberly Moore. How the people that are actually living it are usually the ones that are much more apt to try and help others in that situation because they know what it feels like.
Right, they've lived it.
Exactly. You've got 30 million kids that are growing up in poverty. In one low-income community, which we've talked about before, there was only one book in every 300 children. Imagine, we've talked about it, one book for 300 kids.
Plus, you get a higher percentage of absentees or kids who leave school entirely because they're more likely to have to find work to care for family members. And these are usually the kinds of things that we hear about one of our heroes of the week, Rachel Ley, who had Sew for the Future, where she would give sewing machines to widows in India who would have to pull their children out of school to work to support the family after the families would basically kick the families out when the women's husbands would die. Well, here you have the same thing in the United States sometimes, where kids just have to quit school to take care of their family.
I think it's also people talk about poverty impacting schools, and I was talking to Beverly Shahara this morning regarding the fact of how the tests are done, and we'll bring that up at another time, because a lot of the tests that are run for the educational system come from these books. But some of the poor schools, and this is a paper that was put out, and we'll be bringing you that probably next week. This paper basically states that these low-income schools can't afford the books. So how can they pass the exams if they don't know what's in the exam, because they've got to get it out of the books they're supposed to be learning from? It's ridiculous to believe that only kids in high-wealth white neighborhoods have the college DNA. It's not acceptable. There are kids out there that come from low-income societies that have the potential to go on to have a college degree, to make some difference in life. And usually, as I just said, those are the people probably that will make a difference in their own communities a lot of the time. Some won't. Some will say, forget it, I just want to live my life, and now I've come out of the poor area and it doesn't matter anymore. But some, and I know a lot of them, like Kimberly Moore has mentioned on her Adopt a Letter program, some really want to give back to the communities that they've come from.
And that's exciting, too, to think that, someone who has been shown that kindness, and it shows the power of kindness, and it shows the power of what the groups that the Peace Fund works with, it shows the power of what they do. You can inspire someone either to help, or someone who's been helped, to say, hey, this is, I know and I understand the difference this made in my life, and I want to try to pass that on to somebody else. It was a really good show a couple of weeks ago. It was our December 23rd show that you can find on our blog.thepeacefund.org, to listen to that show with Kimberly. Lots of really good insights there.
I think when we talk about we've talked about the jobs that are in the U.S. and how in a few years, because of the way that the schooling system is structured in some respects, we're wasting a massive human potential by not figuring out a way to increase access and support for all our kids. It's obvious. It's an obvious advantage if you come from a higher income family. It really, it enables parents to spend more money on books and computers and summer camps, music lessons, ballet lessons, et cetera, et cetera. And, these experiences matter because they help kids acquire a vocabulary and a background, a knowledge critical to achieving high levels of literacy needed for many of the well-paying jobs that we have in our society today. But what's less obvious is that as income inequalities increase, so has the residential isolation of low-income and high-income families. I mean, we're looking at these statistics, and I think you might have some of them too, John. It's relative to 40 years ago. Poor families are now more likely to be surrounded by other poor families, while high-income families are similarly isolated.
It's because you've got the kids, are attending schools that are close to home, which it almost puts in effect a residential segregation, where you have increasing concentrations of low and high income children attending different schools. And then you've got the changes in the composition of student enrollments that shape how the schools function and contribute to the gap between the achievement and completed school of children growing up in families at opposite ends of that income scale that you talked about earlier.
Right. And, again, all of this comes from, how do you solve the issue? How do we solve this issue? We've got to give our kids the tools to do it, whether it is in El Salvador, in South Central, in Washington, in Virginia, in Los Angeles, wherever it is. We've got to give the kids the tools to be able to improve their lives and our lives in the long run. Because when we have societies or sections of cities that are inoperable, that the businesses can't run properly because they're run by gangs, or they're run by they don't have enough money to pave the streets or run the electricity. There are places like that, believe it or not, ladies and gentlemen, in the United States alone. Yes, the United States is one of the most forward-thinking countries in the world. However, there are a lot of issues here, as there are in other countries. And what do? Do we have to start here, or do we start somewhere else? That's a very big issue. We want to try and start it small, step by step, by just bringing people together. That's why I just want to mention our LAUSD surface donations briefly, John, because we're about to run that starting very soon. The details of that.
I've got a great response to that so far.
Yeah, it's we actually have The LAUSD are going to provide us with, and actually, they actually sent us that this morning. The information on that. There are actually, they've sent us 25 schools. We will be picking 9 out of them in total, but they are going to be picking schools from elementary classrooms, middle school classrooms, and high school classrooms. They have selected a certain number of teachers already. That it basically there are 26 schools in total with 33 nominated teachers, and it really is very simple. What they have to do is they have to take a school a project. They have to submit it, such as a short video, a picture collage, anything the children and the teachers want to do, and let their imagination guide them to what will work for them. Topic is really simple. How will a Surface tablet help improve our class? You know, the project will demonstrate basically positive aspects of having access to these tablets on a daily basis. We wanted to make sure that these tablets went out to the school systems rather than individuals, because you're going to have several schools, 2 or 3 years or 4 years, depending on what that school has the ability to fund, of utilizing these tablets. Therefore, we're not just going to be, helping maybe, let's say, 500 kids. It might end up being 2,000, 2,500, 5,000 kids that just have these tablets at their disposal. So we really want this. Now, all the entries will be uploaded to the Peace Fund website and social media outlets for public voting. We'll be bringing that information very shortly. And on completion of the contest, we will have 9 classroom teachers to gather, and I will deliver those myself to them, and we will give them the Surface tablets for their, and we will be bringing you updates as to how those tablets are being used over the next few months.
We'll have to get some of those teachers on the show.
That's what we're planning on doing. We're also talking about taking Peace Fund Radio into a couple of those classrooms to talk about it. So that's something. But I think it's important to know that that's the technology aspect of it. February 6th is when we're going to try and pick those winners, and we will be bringing you all that information, and it'll be on our website as well. But I think it's something that, in a small way, the Peace Fund can help get some of these schools, and it's a generous donation by Microsoft. Actually, Chad Hawthorne up in Seattle. Chad, if you're listening to the show this morning, thank you again for this opportunity for the Peace Fund to help with furthering the education of some of our kids in our classrooms. How does poverty affect kids in the classroom? Well, it's John. I'm going to leave that one for you. I mean, there's so many different things that happen because there's poverty.
There are for sure. Children who live in poverty, are coming to school from conditions at home that are not good. You've got family of violence, abuse, neglect, poor clothing. Those kids don't have enough sleep. They probably didn't have breakfast. And even though they have limited world experience, they're not able to pay for field trips. They can't pay for extracurricular activities of any kind, which could actually expand their experiences. And that's just the reality for millions of children. It's frightening. Yeah, but teachers are likely to have impoverished students in their class.
Don't you also have the issue? I mean, I think the issue is not just learning, because when you don't have the books, you don't even sometimes have the health and nutrition that some of these kids need, because when you don't have that, then you're lethargic, you're not paying attention. There are so many different things, that are associated also with health and nutrition.
Right, and it could be a situation, too, where sometimes the teachers think, well, this kid is lazy or doesn't care. Well, it's not that they're not engaged. They're just literally too tired or don't have the energy to pay attention, and that's that's sad in itself.
Well, there's also the fact that with poor nutrition, you got less exercise, diminished health practices, harder for them to listen, as we talked about, and it also leads to exposure to this leads to poor working memory and weaker ability to think, and kids will get things like ear infections. My child has had an ear infection for 3 days. He's been screaming backwards and forwards, and he can't concentrate on anything. So, you can imagine if a kid doesn't have the proper nutrition and goes to school without the right food in his belly or her belly, how are they might get an ear infection, which, means sound discrimination, making it tough to follow directions or, understand the teacher. It can hurt reading and other skills. So there are so many things, as we've talked about many times on this show, the domino effect about one thing. Giving poor diet, for instance, giving to the kids high sugar, for instance, which give them hyperactivity, doesn't allow them to concentrate on what they should be concentrating on, which is their schoolwork.
And vocabulary plays a big part in it as well. Kids who grow up in low socioeconomic conditions typically have smaller vocabularies than middle-class children, which raises the risk for academic failure. Kids from low-income families hear, on an average, 13 million words by age 4. In a middle-class family, children hear about 26 million words during that same time period. The same study shows that in an upper-income family, kids in that same age group hear a staggering 46 million words by age 4.
Isn't that amazing?
3 times as many.
And we've talked about it before, about how a child needs to be able to see a word. I think it's 2,000 times before they're actually able to read it. There's an association with repetition.
Mm-hmm. And we've also talked, too, about even how nursery rhymes are powerful tools for, again, having that repetition and that rhythm of words that sort of helps the kids really, really grab onto those.
You've got a hero of the week this morning that we want to talk to. And I want you to give us a little bit of information about our latest hero of the week.
Well, since the beginning of December, we've had some really great heroes who have dealt with trying to bring literacy to children who are, not able to afford it on their own. And back on our April 15th show, we first told you about Rachel Ley, who founded Literacy for Little Ones to encourage parents to read to their newborns, which creates a special bond in the family, builds a strong foundation for education, and instills a lifelong love of reading. Rachel is going to be joining us today to talk about her journey and to bring us some updates on everything that our organization has been up to. And I've also spoken to Rachel also about helping us out with the Kimberly Moore initiative. So we may have some more information on that soon as well.
Okay, awesome. I will in my while we're discussing here, John, I will actually try and bring her in. That might be a little bit harder to do this morning, since the rain is now making all the internet connections rather odd. But anyway,
I believe in you, Adrian.
You believe in me? Well, I'm glad you're one of the few people that. I mean, Ethan's like, oh, you can't do this show without me. How dare you even think about it?
And while we're getting Rachel on the line, you can check out her website at literacyforlittleones.com, which also has links to her Twitter page as well.
All right, let me see if I can actually get her on here and see what we actually do. I've actually seen. Let's see if it rings. See if I've been good at doing this.
I think it's working.
I think it's working. Something's while we're doing that, while we're hearing anything, I actually also want to give a couple of shout-outs to a couple of... Oh, there we go. There are a couple of organizations we need to talk about in a second. But once we've got Rachel on the line, I'll give a shout-out to those guys.
Oh.
So. Good morning. Is this Rachel?
Yes, it is.
Hello, Rachel. Good morning. This is Adrian Paulin and John Bierly on...
Good morning,
Peace on
Rachel.
Radio.
Glad to have you on the show.
Hi, how are you doing?
Good. How are you?
well.
Are you wet this morning, or is it dry where you're at?
It is dry.
Dry? Where are you calling us?
Yeah.
Where are we calling you from today?
I'm in South Carolina right now.
South Carolina. And how old are you, Rachel?
I turned 19 today. It's my birthday.
Oh, happy
Happy
birthday.
birthday.
If I could sing, I would do
Thank
it.
you.
But unfortunately, I'm a lousy singer, so it won't work. I want to start talking to you today because I know you've got your own history with literacy. So how did you learn to read? I mean, because this is what we're talking about today.
So I started, my mom read to me on what she called a 10 books a day diet from the time I was an infant until I was able to read to myself. So she read 10 children's books to me every day.
10 a day. So I mean that's a lot of books for a parent to do. I mean, did you find it? Did you find you were able to pick it up very quickly? Is that was that the reason why you started the program? Is 10 books a day? How long did you do this for, by the way?
I think by the time I was about 4 years old, I was able to read to myself then.
When you were 4?
I think it was very efficient and effective for her.
That's very impressive. 4 years old, being able to read. I mean, it's it's interesting because we've been talking about how a child actually needs to see a word 2,000 times until they really get used to being able to read it. And I think you've just proven the point, because your mom had a repetition of 10 books a day, and you were able to pick it up very quickly.
Yeah, definitely.
What kind of books did she read to you?
She read a lot of different children's books. Some of my favorites were like the Dr. Seuss ones, the No David books.
So the Dr. Seuss ones were your favorites?
Yeah, I really enjoyed those.
What, like the I Am Sam? What is it? Sam I Am? I know I read that one to my kids. I do not like green eggs and ham.
Yeah, and green eggs and ham.
See, I know them because I read them to my kids. I do not read them.
Rachel, how did being read to, how did that affect your ability and your desire to read?
I think whenever I was reading with my mom, it was always a fun time for us to bond, and I found it to be a really fun activity, so that just created a passion for it and a desire to continue reading for me.
So you started and you noticed that there were other students in school struggling with literacy. How old were you when you noticed that?
I started seeing that a lot in my later elementary school years, around like 4th and 5th grade. Really, I was beginning to notice it.
And what sort of forms did this take? Them not being able to read? What did you notice?
Yeah, I noticed. Well, for me, my hand would always shoot up at the opportunity to read aloud in class. I really enjoyed it, and I noticed for some of my friends and classmates that wasn't the same, and they were embarrassed about their reading abilities and didn't enjoy it as much as I did. So
okay, here's a key question here, because I think this is what we've been talking about this morning. How did it affect them? Apart from not wanting to do it, did they do other things? Did they become listless? Were they more disruptive? What was the reaction, when they didn't want to do it or they felt embarrassed to do it?
Yeah, I think that for them, it was really something just embarrassing, not being able to read aloud at grade level and keep up with their classmates. So for them, reading wasn't something fun to do, and it just interrupted the rest of their studies because reading is so crucial throughout school.
Now, Rachel, when did you actually decide to start Literacy for Little Ones, and how old were you when you started?
Yeah, so I decided to start Literacy for Little Ones in 6th grade. I kind of got the idea based on the 10 books a day diet that my mom kept me on, and then after noticing my classmates struggling with reading, so in 6th grade.
So what was the first step really to creating Literacy for Little Ones?
The first step, I knew we would want to be getting books so that these children had the opportunity to read. So the first step was applying for a grant through Disney and Youth Service America for $500 to purchase the initial materials and supplies.
How many materials was it? Was it a lot of materials for $500?
Mm-hmm. I think we, with the $500, initially we were able to purchase materials for about 400 book packages.
So, sorry, for 400 what?
Book packages. And the packages include a new children's book and a letter to the parents explaining the importance of early literacy.
Did you find a lot of people accepted that, or were they reticent to it? What was their reaction to you handing them this little package?
I think they were very appreciative of it. The very first time that I dropped off the books, I actually was able to go in and speak with the first new mother who was receiving the book package, and it really resonated with me. She was only 18 years old, and she talked about how she didn't know how important reading was with her child, and she didn't have any books to read to her child. So she said that after receiving the book package, she was going to be able to do more reading with her child then.
Let me ask you a question, and because we've been talking about how different high-income, low-income families work, what sort of demographic were you dealing with in this site? Was it what areas were you targeting?
Yeah, great question. So the books were going to every new mother who had a child at my local hospital. So whether that was someone coming from a high income or low income, regardless of their socioeconomic status, they would receive the book packages.
And so is this now? Is that how it worked? First of all, how old were you when you started it? Because that's kind of my question. I mean, you're in grade 4 or 5. How old were you when you actually started the program?
I was 12, so in 6th grade.
Of course you were, because all our great heroes that come around about that age is because let me ask you. I mean, is this something that happens around that age? Because a lot of our heroes of the week are like 10 years old, 8 years old, 9, 10, 11, 12. And around that time, they feel that they really have to do something. Is this something really that spurred you to do it?
I think that at that age, you're still confident in your abilities and confident in what you can do, and you come up with a lot of inventive ideas. So I think my mother was very supportive of the idea, and my community as well. So it worked out very well.
So what was the next step? How have you grown since that time?
Great question. So now Literacy for Little Ones serves 11 hospitals in Wisconsin, Minnesota, and Nicaragua. So we've provided about 17,000 book packages to families, and about 1,000 youth volunteers have gotten involved in the program as well.
How do you get your youth volunteers?
Yeah, so it originally just started with me and a close group of friends would assemble all of the book packages, and then as we spin into more hospitals and we needed more book packages to be created, so I started asking different community groups like sports teams, student councils, National Honor Society to get involved with the program.
And what's the biggest project that you've accomplished with your volunteers? Rachel, I know you had a big September 11th book drive as well.
Yeah, I would say the biggest volunteer project that we had was probably over the 9/11 service day. We initiated a project where we had 9 different youth groups assemble over 1,100 book packages to commemorate the day of service. So I think that was a really big project to undertake with the volunteers to get that many youth groups to complete that many book packages within just 2 weeks.
That is awesome. Now, where do you get the books that you distribute?
Great question. So we look for books that are really good for children and that will be able to be read to infants, but also have lower prices. So we try to buy in bulk from different stores, and then also we've been very fortunate to receive a lot of donations with new children's books. We actually had a local author donate 80 of her books that were going for great prices on Amazon, and she donated them all for free. So we were very appreciative of that.
That's very cool. I mean, I think it's and when you said you take them to hospitals to distribute the books, is that right? Mm-hmm. And so how does that work? You just you give them to new mothers only? Is that how it works?
Yeah. So every time a new child is born, the mother will receive the book package.
Which is amazing to think that every child born in these hospitals gets a package from Rachel. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, Rachel, you're doing a fantastic job. What do you think is? Why do you think it's important to give back to young people?
I think it's so important. Just after everything that my community has done for me, going to school and just receiving so much community support, I think it's important to be able to give back in some way in an issue that you're passionate about. So for me, that was through Literacy for Little Ones.
And you had mentioned earlier, too, Rachel, that you had expanded into Nicaragua. How did that come about, and have you had a chance to visit there in person?
Yeah, great question. So the Nicaragua project came about. Wisconsin has a wonderful organization called the Wisconsin-Nicaragua Partnership that donates a lot of different items and works with people in Nicaragua to create a very interesting partnership with them. So I was attending one of their volunteer meetings for the organization, and they were talking about a hospital that they had for women and children. And they were just talking about things they needed at this hospital, and right away the light bulb went off for my head. If anyone really truly needs these books to be able to read to their children, it's the people in Nicaragua. So I worked with the director to be able to ship down books to 3 hospitals in Nicaragua.
That is awesome.
Yeah, so what's next for literacy for little ones?
Yeah, we're looking forward to another hopefully great year in 2016 with more expansion and growth to new hospitals and continuing to engage a lot more youth volunteers.
So where can listeners find find out how to help?
Yeah, so they can go to www.literacyforlittleones.com online, where they can find more information about getting involved with the program.
So one last question. When you started your organization, and you were young, you were 12 years old, and if there's another 12-year-old out there that wants to do the same thing, what would be the advice you'd give them? Because I'm sure there was roadblocks that you found or things that didn't work, but what advice would you give them?
Yeah, so the advice that I would give them is to reach out and connect with your friends, your family, because in some way, shape, or form, people are going to want to help you if it's something you're truly passionate about making a difference in the world somehow. And the more connections you're able to make, the further your project can expand and grow and be able to make an even larger impact on the world.
Well, I think you've done an amazing job. And Rachel Ley, you are Peace Fund Hero of the Week. Congratulations.
Thank
please
you.
Continue working, and I'm looking forward to hearing more great things about you.
Yes, thanks so much, Rachel. We
Awesome.
appreciate your time
Thank
so
you
much.
so much.
Thank you. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye now.
So there we go again.
There we go
Another incredible young person.
12 years old. I love that.
Yeah.
Don't you just love it? I mean, that's what I love the most is hearing, kids. I mean, you really put it on the line when you as an adult now, like, I'm too old to do something. Well, no, you're not, but you've got to be inspired by these kids.
Never too old.
I think
Rachel's won lots of really nice awards, too. She was awarded the Gloria Barron Prize for Young Heroes, as many as of our heroes of the week have won. You can find that at gloriabarronprize.org. She's won the Jefferson Award, lots of community awards as well. And those are good because it's not just lauding someone with an award. Every time one of these heroes of the week wins an award, it gives more attention to their cause and lets other people learn about what they're doing and how they can help. And I think that's a positive way all around. So check her out at literacyforlittleones.com.
And I want to just want to preempt what we're probably going to be talking about again next week, which was, we were talking about, I mentioned earlier on in the show about how, school funding, when you have the only long-term solution to poverty might be a good education, but the problem is that spending on education has not kept pace with the rise of child poverty. And, with the decrease in public school funding, it's really sort of a blow to a lot of the high rates of poverty because students in these areas don't only suffer from a lack of resources at home, but their schools also have got to scrape out on a minimum budget. So, it seems to be somehow that the middle class is disappearing and that the gap is widening between upper and lower class sectors of society.
And sometimes the teachers are picking up the slack as well. There was a Communities in School national poll that found that 91% of teachers help their impoverished students by using their own money to purchase supplies.
Oh, I've seen that even. I mean, this is the thing I don't think a lot of people really understand, is that teachers spend their own time doing things outside of the school. It just doesn't stop when your kids come home from school. They're continuing to work to put the classes together, to find the books, to scrape it up. And I think you're right, John, even their own money to put it in this. And I think, it's important to really understand that, because I think teachers get a bad rap a lot of the time because, the kids don't respect them, and neither do the parents sometimes.
Well, that same study showed that 51% had spent their own money to feed students, 49% of teachers helped students get new clothes or new shoes, and 29% of teachers have actually paid for medical care for their students.
Well, I think I want to talk next week about preschool, how to fight poverty in preschool, because that's a it can make a huge difference to a lot of these kids when you've got low income. I mean, Title I schools have decreased since 2001. A number of states have cut pre-K education per student in recent years, and many have to even reduce the enrollment numbers. So we're going to be talking about that at another time. Right now, I want to talk very briefly, because again, we are getting close to being at the end of the show again.
I hope Ethan is still out there driving towards safety.
Well, I hope he's got a paddle, because Ethan Dettenmaier, hopefully he's listening to us. Maybe he's listening to us. I don't know. Ethan. Anyway, Kids in Need Foundation, charity navigator 4-star, www.kinf.org. It's a charitable organization founded in 1995. Their mission is to ensure that every child is prepared to learn and succeed by providing free school supplies nationally to students most in need. They provide free school supplies to resource centers in their national network across the country, where teachers can actually get free supplies for their students. So check those out there.
We also have communitiesinschools.org, nationwide network of passionate professionals working in public schools to surround students with a community of support, empowering those students to stay in school and achieve in life.
Yeah, I mean, they actually have a pretty impressive background from what I noticed. They've got 99% of their students that they serve stay in school. That's a very important number. 99% of the students they serve stay in school. 93% of their students were promoted to the next grade. 91 of their students graduate, and 83 of their students met academic improvement goals.
And I think a big part of that is their flexibility. They work with students' needs. They partner with local businesses, social service agencies, which is a lot of what the Peace Fund tries to do. In other words, they're trying to get these various forms of help, bring them together to get results. Right.
Well, we've talked a lot about things this week. Do we have any other updates this week, John, that you might want to bring us? I know you've had to step in the big shoes of Ethan Dettenmaier this morning, but what else do you have for us?
No one can fill those shoes as well as Ethan can. But as I said at the top of the hour, we have a lot of exciting things going on behind the scenes right now with some of our heroes of the week working with the Kimberly Moore Foundation, and I'll have some news about that over the coming weeks as those plans are finalized. You can find us at thepeacefund.org. Follow Adrian at AdrianPaul1. Follow Ethan at Combat Radio. And you can find us on Facebook and Twitter, The Peace Fund and Peace Fund Radio, for all of the news about the show and everything that we're up to.
Well, I also want to mention that our website will be coming up. The Peace Fund website and the new Peace Fund Radio website will be live in a couple of weeks' time, hopefully. I say that because, glitches can happen. But that will be happening soon. I'm also launching a new website, the Sword Experience, that I will be sending out. That's going to be launching in another week or two as well. So there'll be a lot of things happening in 2016, as well as a couple of other things that I can't mention yet, which hopefully will not only increase our giving to people, but give us a little bit more of a higher profile. In closing, John, thank you so much. I also want to say thank you to Bev Shahara. I mean, she works so hard every week.
She does so much work.
The stuff that she does is fantastic. Bev, thank you so much. As well as I want to say thank you to Kimberly O'Keefe, who's running our LAUSD program at the moment, and Chad Hawthorne, who's actually coming to teach the teachers about the Microsoft Surfaces, because we just don't want to dump them and say, well, there they are, have them learn them. We're actually going to have technical support as well for them as well on it, which I think is a great thing. So in closing, I just want to obviously have our quote of the week from Frederick Douglass. It is, if it is easier to build strong children than to repair broken men. This is Adrian Paul and Ethan Dettenmaier. We'll see you again. And, of course, John Bierly. Take care.
You're listening to Peace Fund Radio with Ethan Dettenmaier and Adrian Paul, right here on LA Talk Radio.